Okay, so I've got Howard Watson here, who is the Director of People, Workforce Management at Civica. Do you want to tell us a little bit about just about what you guys do at Civica, and then we'll just have a chat about how you're finding this event and some of the stuff that you're a speaker at it, obviously. So I really want to know what you were talking about.
Thank you. So yes, Civica are a software provider across the UK and across the globe. So we work with North America's APAC regions as well as across the UK. We have several different divisions. So our main four areas of interest are local government, central government, health and care, and our education divisions.
Okay.
But I work specifically then within our people and workforce, which is a supporting division, because we work across all four of our main four pillars. So we can provide our software, so it covers occupational health, HR, payroll, learning management, expenses, etc.
So it's pretty broad.
So it's a very broad brush. So this is one of our main key fields, and obviously this particular event is the industry standard really for occupational health.
Absolutely.
So it's where we can get together with most of our clients in a single bound.
Yeah. And have you found it so far? I've seen quite a few people on your standards.
Yeah, it's been busy. So the footfall is always good. We were saying amongst ourselves, I think the footfall is slightly down on what it normally is, but the standard of attendee has improved. So there are
You're not
fewer
the first
people.
person to say that to me.
Yeah. Well, I certainly feel that the people aren't getting as much time away from work as they used to. Again, we used to talk about the fact that people attended for both days. I've been doing this show for 15 years.
Have you?
So the people used to be here for both days, and locally, any bar or restaurant you went into last night would have been a group of occupational health people that you knew, having conversations, etc. But now I think with the way people are set up with work, hotel bills, 2 days away from the office, etc., tends to be a bit more difficult. So people, they pick which day they're going to come. And again, the way that the show is set up now with more speaker sessions, people pick the day that most suits what it is that they're interested in, and then they either come on the Tuesday or the Wednesday as a singular day. So, but again, footfall's been really good, and we've had lots of interest from people.
So what are you picking up in terms of the kind of themes and trends that people are chatting to you about on the stand? What are they looking for? How's it changed from the last couple of years, would you say?
Well, there's a few things. So we work across a broad spectrum of occupational health as well. So we are the largest provider into the NHS and public sector, but we also have a lot of private sector clients. And interestingly, the mix between the two. So occupational health within the public sector is all about having to do more with less. Their budget constraints are coming in. They're having to look at how they can make their systems most efficient.
Okay.
Whereas on the private sector, it's all about the return on investment. If they can invest some more and get a bigger or better return for that investment, then they're happier to do so. But again, it's all about making what they've got the most efficient it can be.
Okay. And how does that fit with it? So I know you've been speaking here this week, and I think you were presenting on some new research that you guys have done, or you've obviously pulled data that you've got from. Is it that you pulled data from it, or is it separate research?
No, we had our own. So Civica have had some research conducted.
Okay.
We worked with Total Research, and it was specifically for our workforce management. So it's part of our HR and payroll type activities across the people and workforce spectrum.
Okay.
And we were looking at what it is that the challenges that people currently face, and what they think their biggest challenges will be. Either
organisationally or individual employees?
Organisationally. What's the biggest thing that's going to challenge your organisation in 2025, and what's going to challenge you for the next 5 years?
Okay, interesting. So what's give us the readout then on what that was.
So the research isn't fully complete, but we've had the headline data back, and the two things that absolutely came across were the recruitment and retention of employees.
Okay.
During the session I did yesterday morning, we were talking about the fact that actually, if you go back a generation, my father, when he was at work, one of the things I said was that you got a job, you liked it or not, but you were being paid, and if you'd done it for 5 years, you were then probably committed for a job for life, because you either had loyalty or that was now your specialism, and you just stayed doing whatever it is you'd done. That isn't the case anymore. People have far more options. That is far more open to people to change and transition in their careers these days. So,
and what what were you picking up? I mean, obviously there is that cultural shift that is a driver of it, but were you picking up other things as well in terms of, you know, for example, are there things that some organisations are doing that have better retention, and that therefore the other organisations that have worse retention aren't doing?
so one of the interesting things that came out of the research is that money isn't the be all and end all. That people aren't just chasing the highest possible salary.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an influencer certainly, but culture and ethos absolutely stand out as if the company has a good culture, if it has a good ethos, if it embeds those for all of the employees, that actually goes a much longer way to retaining the top performers.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I used to run a health and wellbeing consultancy that did a lot of surveys on with big employers, whole staff surveys, looking at essentially, you know, the barriers and enablers of wellbeing, so
Right.
sources of pressure, you know, things like the management standards, levels of psychological health, physical health, and business level outcomes as the at the end point, and you know, one of the sources of pressure was pay and benefits, but the others were things like work relationships, workload, job security and change, those kind of things. And time again, pay and benefits would be fourth, fifth out of 6 or 7 different things. But things like sense of purpose, things like you know, manageable workload, were much higher. Work relationships as well. It was always up there. So yeah, I'm in a way, I'm not surprised to see that, but it wasn't ever thus, was it?
Well, it's interesting because the research pretty much mirrors exactly what you said. So I think that is a really good summary of where we find ourselves today.
Yeah.
One of the things that came through as well, and you've just mentioned there, is line management, and it's the line managers having more pressure on them. And again, part of the conversation I had yesterday was, just because you're a good salesman doesn't mean that you'll make the best sales manager.
Technical skills,
Different set of skills. We use a skills miner is one of the softwares that we use that actually look at the capability of the person versus the requirements of the job to see actually is that person in the job that is best for them.
That's really interesting, that, because there's a real cultural thing as well that you're going to have to be working on with an employer about. You know, you can tell them that, but you know, there's a culture of promoting the best person to the next role, isn't there? So how you're going to communicate that and break that down and get them to change their mindset on that.
And again, it is a mindset. It's all too often people either do they've been there the longest, therefore they should be the next person in line for the promotion, or they've performed the best in their previous role, so therefore they get the next step up. But that isn't necessarily the case. It is making sure that you get the right person in those line manager roles.
It's really interesting though, because similar, that same, as what I was talking about, that same model, there was a lot of data in that model, so it allowed you, if you did it over time with an organisation, so say you measured them for 3 years, you'd start to be able to look at the patterns across over time, and you start to be able to predict things and use predictive. So one of the things that we used to measure was good days at work, so the number of good days at work that you had a week, and on across your workforce. And what we found with one particular client, and then we started to find it with others as well, was that you could predict attrition and parts of the business that were at risk of attrition purely based on the good day at work score. So, you know, the parts of the business that had, let's say, 3.5 good days at work a week would have, in a year, it would be that long, like the lead time on it in a year would have higher attrition than ones that had 4.5 days a week. So what that allowed you to do was start to do something about it. And the reason I mention it is because you're talking about there. So what's a manager's role, right? A manager's role is to make sure people have good days at work, and that is not a skill that comes with being a technically good at your
just
job,
being promoted, with your job title.
In fact, it's probably quite foreign to you to work out how to do that unless you have a lot of support to get there.
And again, one of the things that came from the research, so there was some on the training, so line managers not receiving adequate training. We just assume, now that we're given the line manager title, that they will be a good line manager. and it's making sure that is emphasised, that we are supporting and training these people to do the work that is required. But interestingly, one of the people came and spoke to me on the stand after the talk yesterday, and they were saying that they'd done their own research internally where they worked about the correlation between the relationship with line managers and the amount of absence taken, and they were actually able to see that by the relationship with their line manager, they were able to predict the amount of absence an individual was likely to take.
Very interesting. So the quality of the relationship as rated by the employee.
Yes,
yeah. Okay, and that was okay. That's predicting absence. That's really interesting. I bet it also predicts presenteeism as well.
Yes,
which is a whole other story.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're very big in presenteeism and people understanding that concept. It's the number of times that comes up. The other thing that came up from that conversation was also line managers being able to coach and mentor people. There's a lot of feedback that we had was the line managers feeling they weren't doing a good job purely because they weren't being given the time. They knew how to coach, they knew how to mentor, but actually their job, their new line management job, was full time doing whatever it may be that particular role required. So they weren't getting the time, and then them feeling themselves that they were failing their employees by not coaching and mentoring. So
that's really interesting.
Yeah, again, it's got to be providing that time for them.
And that actually reflects another theme that has come up a few times in this podcast booth, is job design. So really, if you're designing if you're really thinking about what a line manager's role is and how it informs or drives the wellbeing agenda and wellbeing outcomes, then you would craft that job to include coaching and mentoring. But if you were not thinking about the connection between those things and you had a productivity lens on this thing, you're thinking, right, you need to be making sure stuff happens and things get made and money gets made, whatever. So it's I think it's overlooked, job design.
And again, the interesting connection to that is the job design where we've seen that happen actually then creates better productivity and efficiency, because what you're doing is that one leader is sharing it with many and improving the productivity of many rather than than just themselves. And where it is built in as part of that job design, it actually creates more efficiency rather than less.
And do you guys work on that to help people design jobs based on the information that you're holding in your system?
We don't specifically
form it.
Yeah, I was going to say, but we work with. We almost gain it by osmosis. We have so many clients across all of this. We have discussions. We do research pieces, but actually just speaking to our own client base about the various things that we've seen and what good looks like with others, and they then adopt those. So we kind of, as I say, get it through osmosis rather than a specific. We help and advise on those. We just get it from good conversations with our client base.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're really part of that conversation in terms of the line manager piece, the job design piece, and there's a direct association to the kind of the way that you're helping to manage information and pull that together for organisations.
Yeah, and for Civica ourselves, it's a big thing for us. So we have a really good culture of that job design piece where we've looked at exactly how it works within our own organisation, so that we are sharing with the customer base to say we've done this and it's really worked for us. So
So do you have a health and wellbeing lead at Civica then?
So we've got our own obviously our people team, so they look after all of the occupational health as well as the HR and everything else that goes with the business itself.
Because you've got to be a bit of a model, haven't you? When you're in that kind of position and you've got lots of clients, it's got to look and feel like you guys buy into it, but also can execute it.
I was going to say there's an interesting phrase you've used there, is that you've got to have that look and feel. You can't just do look and feel, you've got to live it. You've got to. One of the things we talked about in the session yesterday morning was the ethos and the culture of a business can't just be lip service. It's got to be driven top down, and you've got to make sure that is emphasised at all possible opportunities. And Civica certainly have a good culture and ethos for ourselves. But when we then go and talk to our customer base about it, as I say, it's more disingenuous to do it just as a lip service than it is if you don't do anything at all. So actually, if you're going to do it, you must wholeheartedly commit.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you will know this, you can't build long-lasting, deep rooted relationships if you're not authentic.
If you haven't got the trust.
But also, people don't want to work with people who don't look and feel like they're enjoying what they're doing. That's how you build that sense of partnership and being on a journey together, isn't it? It needs to come from each and every one of your people who interact with a customer. You want them to feel and perform their best.
Yeah, there's got to be a value equation. There's got to be a sharing of value. So
Yeah,
they've got to gain something from that relationship in the same way. So yes, we work towards that.
and was there anything else from the research that particularly came out that beyond those initial findings that you've shared so far?
So there is. It's very extensive. As I say, the piece isn't fully finished. The other highlights, I suppose, that came out, there are the ethos and culture was something. People finding it difficult post Brexit. So we had Brexit in 2019, followed very quickly by a pandemic which shook everybody, and that's then led to a differing focus, I think, of the workforce. We have some people that don't want to work in an office ever again. We have some people that can't wait to get out of home and into a working environment again. So,
and some organisations who will allow one and not the
yes,
other.
and Civica. So we kind of have a hybrid version. We like people to be in the office 2 days a week, but it's not a mandatory. But actually, we find that those people have much better mental health if they do, sharing the stories rather than just being in a Teams meeting with colleagues. So but it is horses for courses. That it's different with each individual, and one of the things the research showed was training and development of people, where people see that as a much higher value to them in their future careers. It's much harder to do in a remote environment. So getting the training across in a Teams environment rather than we'll have everybody in the office and we'll do it on site. Much more difficult to do, but there are ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And again, obviously we have ways with it. We have solutions for that with our LMS and different things, but it's those are the things that are also now challenging organisations.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously things have moved on, and trainers have got the tech is good, and trainers have good ways of using it. So you can do good online training, but I do think that all or nothing thing doesn't really work, because it's also that thing about, certainly in my experience, is that when you do meetings in particular online, it's very instrumental. So it's about that meeting.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, if you think about all the chat around the edges, it's much less than people have an allocated slot for it. It's very time driven. People come on, do the thing, and a lot of that, the classic water cooler stuff, you don't that gets missed. And I think, the stuff that you get, that those little bits of value, those little bits of innovation or sharing an idea, you're much less likely to share that.
And the other thing on the flip side of that we've also found, talking to our customer base, is people don't engage now with Teams like they used to. If you were in a Teams meeting, if you're in a meeting in your main building and you all go into a boardroom, nobody will pick up their phone at any point and start typing an email. If you're at home now on a Teams meeting and on your second screen you just glance something, you can see people tapping a keyboard while in a meeting. You wouldn't do that in person, but now people think they can multitask, but it just means they're not engaging with what they really should be focused on. And that we're getting that from a lot of our client base now.
Yeah, and I suppose the kind of corollary of that is that there's the, like I said then, there's the conversations you don't have. There's the as you said, the engagement. Well, what is the outcome of that? Is you're getting basically more shallow relationships.
Yeah.
Like, you're not getting those deep relationships that you get at work when the magic happens.
Yeah.
And that is also about, being that social support, and being there for each other, and knowing that when things get tough, you can turn to people because you've got those deep relationships. I just fundamentally don't believe that deep relationships can be built on Teams.
No.
You see someone twice a year, it cannot be a deep relationship.
No.
All it can be is a transactional relationship where you're tied together with some responsibilities that you have to deliver. And I think, well, on that basis, I think you're right to definitely think you're right to insist on not insist on, encourage. Let's say you wouldn't say insist, but scratch that. But that you encourage the 2 days, because then you are going to get some of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think it works really well. It's getting people back into that, as you say, the communicative, the water cooler thing. You can't overestimate how important that is for just having those conversations aside from main meetings, and you just don't do that when you're working remotely.
Yeah, good stuff. So before we wrap up, then, just if you were to kind of take one thing from the panel, you've obviously seen a few other things because you were on the stage with a round of the speakers, but also your research as well. If you were to kind of give one kind of nugget from either the research or what you've picked up around the event for other people, and people in the Working Well community are listening, and people on the event channels who are listening, what would that be?
It's absolutely got to be, you've got to make time for these things. We are overloading people with, and again, so Teams meetings, if you were going to 3 meetings in a building, they wouldn't be finish at 12, start the next one at 12, finish at 1, start the next one at 1, and you are literally hanging up a Teams call straight into another. So you're not giving all to those meetings. We need to go back to giving people the time to make sure that they are able to assist, mentor, prepare for what it is that they should be doing, so they can actually be part. They become more functional, they become more in the moment and more effective then from those. So it's making time for these individuals and not just keep loading the pressure on with here's another task, because eventually it erodes their efficiency.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it actually go back to where we started when you talked about the quality over quantity of the footfall. Quality over quantity of meetings. Sometimes maybe we are entering a bit of an age of quality, hopefully, because I think that would be good for working life.
Yeah, I think the tide is starting to turn.
Good stuff. All right, listen, thank you very much, Howard. I really appreciate your time today, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.
All right.